Zektar stood at the observation deck of Station Kepler-7, watching the human ship approach through the void of space. The vessel looked nothing like the elegant curves of Velthari designs or the geometric precision of Confederation standards. It was blocky, practical, and somehow intimidating despite its smaller size compared to the massive alien ships docked nearby. As a diplomatic observer for the Galactic Confederation, Zektar had witnessed 17 first contact ceremonies in his career. Each species approached their introduction to galactic society with the same careful formality that governed all civilized interactions. The Thromnians brought mathematical proofs of their worthiness. The Kalari presented artistic achievements spanning millennia. The Vexhai offered detailed genealogical records, proving their species' noble heritage. The humans were different from the moment their shuttle landed in the docking bay. Instead of the usual single ambassador with ceremonial guards, they sent a group of 12 individuals who seemed to treat the historic moment like an exciting adventure rather than a solemn diplomatic event. Their leader, Captain Jake Morrison, stepped out of the shuttle with a wide smile and immediately began looking around at everything with obvious curiosity. Zektar observed from his position near the welcome committee as Morrison approached Ambassador Tis Aron, the Confederation's senior diplomat. Where other species would offer formal greetings in ancient ceremonial languages, Morrison simply extended his hand and said, "Good to meet you. We are excited to be here." The captain's appearance struck Zektar as unremarkable by most galactic standards. He was shorter than the average Velthari, with brown hair that looked slightly messy and green eyes that seemed to constantly move, taking in details of everything around him. His uniform was clean but practical, lacking the ornate decorations that most species wore for formal occasions. Behind Morrison came his crew, and Zektar found their diversity fascinating. First Officer Lisa Blake was a tall woman with dark skin and confident posture who immediately began studying the alien technology visible throughout the station. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez kept asking questions about the station's power systems, with an enthusiasm that made the Confederation technicians uncomfortable. Their medical officer, Dr. Amanda Wells, was already engaged in animated conversation with a Thromnian scientist about comparative anatomy. What struck Zektar most was their emotional openness. When Communications Officer Ryan Cooper saw his first Kalari, with their crystalline skin that reflected light in beautiful patterns, he didn't hide his amazement. He actually walked up to the alien and asked if he could take a picture, explaining that his daughter back on Earth would love to see what other species looked like. The Kalari, unused to such direct personal interaction, seemed both confused and pleased by the attention. The formal ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall, where representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness humanity's introduction to galactic society. Ambassador Tisserand began the traditional recitation of Confederation principles, explaining the requirements for full membership and the responsibilities that came with joining the galactic community. Zektar watched the human delegation during the lengthy speech. Most species would sit in respectful silence, occasionally making formal notes. The humans whispered among themselves, pointed at architectural features of the hall, and Morrison actually interrupted the ambassador twice to ask clarifying questions. Such behavior would have been considered insulting from any other species, but somehow the humans made it seem natural rather than rude. When the ambassador finished explaining the membership requirements, Morrison stood up without waiting for formal permission to speak. "We understand the responsibilities," he said, "and we're ready to prove ourselves. What do you need us to do?" The directness of the question caught several alien delegates off guard. The usual process involved weeks of formal negotiations, careful study of all requirements, and elaborate promises of future compliance. No species had ever simply asked what needed to be done and offered to do it immediately. Ambassador Tisserand explained the current situation in the Nexus system, where 3 species had been engaged in territorial disputes for decades. Previous Confederation mediation attempts had failed, and the conflict was growing more violent. A joint peacekeeping mission was being organized, and humanity would need to participate successfully to demonstrate their readiness for full membership. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker, Morrison's tactical officer, immediately asked for detailed information about the species involved, their military capabilities, and the history of the conflict. His questions were practical and direct, focusing on understanding the situation rather than positioning humanity favorably within Confederation politics. Dr. Wells wanted to know about medical needs and humanitarian concerns. Rodriguez asked about technical challenges and what equipment might be needed. Each human approached the mission from their area of expertise, already beginning to plan their contribution before they had even officially accepted the assignment. Zektar found their eagerness both admirable and concerning. Most species would spend considerable time weighing the political implications of their first major Confederation mission. They would analyze how success or failure might affect their long-term standing within galactic society. The humans seemed focused entirely on the practical aspects of helping resolve the conflict. When Morrison officially accepted the mission on behalf of humanity, he added something that surprised everyone present. We'll need an observer from the Confederation to verify our methods and ensure we're following proper protocols. We want there to be no doubt about our commitment to peaceful resolution. This request was unprecedented. No species had ever voluntarily asked for oversight. During their proving mission, Ambassador Tisserand immediately appointed Zektar as the official observer, a decision that filled him with both professional pride and personal anxiety. After the ceremony, Zektar spent time with the human delegation in one of the station's recreational areas. Their behavior remained fascinatingly different from other species. They shared food with any alien who showed interest, asked countless questions about different cultures, and seemed genuinely excited about the diversity of galactic civilization. Ryan Cooper showed pictures of his family to anyone willing to look, explaining human concepts like marriage and parenthood with obvious affection. Lisa Blake engaged in technical discussions with engineers from multiple species, sharing human innovations while eagerly learning about alien technologies. Tony Rodriguez actually convinced a Vex High maintenance worker to give him a tour of the station's engineering sections. Despite the fact that such areas were typically restricted to authorized personnel, what impressed Zektar most was their treatment of the Olari delegate, a species known for their aggressive nature and general unpleasantness. Most galactic diplomats avoided the Olari whenever possible, conducting only the minimum necessary interactions. The humans treated the Olari representative with the same friendly interest they showed everyone else, even when he responded with typical Olari rudeness. As the evening progressed, Zektar observed something that would later prove significant. When discussing the upcoming mission, the humans didn't just talk about success. They also discussed various ways things could go wrong and how they would respond to different scenarios. This level of contingency planning was thorough beyond what most species considered necessary for a simple peacekeeping mission. Morrison explained their philosophy. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's how humans have survived this long. 3 days later, as Zektar prepared to board the human ship HFY, he reflected on his observations. The humans were unlike any species he had encountered in his diplomatic career. They were emotional yet practical, optimistic yet realistic, friendly yet clearly capable of decisive action when necessary. Standing in the docking bay, watching the human crew make final preparations for departure, Zektar felt a mixture of anticipation and unease. Something about these humans suggested that their mission to the Nexus system would be far more interesting than a typical Confederation peacekeeping operation. He had no idea how prophetic that feeling would prove to be. 3 weeks aboard the UES Defiance had given Ziktar a deeper understanding of human behavior, though many aspects still puzzled him. The ship itself reflected human practicality over aesthetics, with corridors that were functional rather than beautiful and common areas designed for efficiency rather than contemplation. The human crew had welcomed him with surprising warmth, treating him less like an official observer and more like a temporary crew member. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Amanda Wells had taken particular interest in helping him understand human culture, patiently explaining concepts that seemed obvious to humans but alien to his logical Valthari mindset. During one of their regular conversations in the ship's small medical bay, Dr. Wells introduced him to the concept of gallows humor. She explained how humans often made jokes in dangerous or stressful situations, not because they didn't understand the seriousness of their circumstances, but as a way of managing fear and maintaining morale. When we laugh at death, she said, while organizing medical supplies, we're not being disrespectful. We're refusing to let fear control us. It's a very human way of staying brave. Ziktar found this explanation fascinating but troubling. In Velthari culture, serious situations demanded serious responses. The idea of joking about danger seemed to indicate either ignorance of the risks or an unhealthy detachment from reality. Yet as he observed the crew, he began to see that their humor actually helped them function more effectively under pressure. Communications. Officer Ryan Cooper provided another example of human complexity. While monitoring routine transmissions from the Nexus system, he intercepted increasingly violent reports from the conflict zone. The situation had deteriorated significantly since their departure from Station Kepler-7. What had been described as territorial disputes between 3 species was rapidly becoming active warfare. The insectoid Krex had apparently launched surprise attacks on Vorthix settlements, claiming the crystalline beings were secretly expanding into disputed territories. The Vorthix retaliated by destroying Krex breeding facilities, leading to escalating casualties. Meanwhile, the aquatic Murdai had withdrawn to their underwater cities, occasionally emerging to attack both sides when they ventured too close. To bodies of water. Cooper reported these developments with professional calm, but Ziktar noticed the slight tension in his voice when he mentioned civilian casualties. The human capacity for emotional response to distant suffering impressed him. Most Confederation species would view such conflicts with detached analysis, focusing on political implications rather than individual tragedy. Captain Morrison's response to the deteriorating situation demonstrated another aspect of human nature that Ziktar found both admirable and concerning. Rather than following standard Confederation protocols, which called for careful consultation with superiors before altering mission parameters, Morrison immediately began adapting their approach. He called a meeting of senior officers in the ship's small conference room, where the cramped quarters forced everyone to sit closer together than would be comfortable for most alien species. Ziktar observed from a corner, noting how the physical proximity seemed to enhance rather than hinder human communication. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker presented tactical analyses that differed significantly from standard Confederation assessments. Where alien military doctrine emphasized predetermined strategies and careful adherence to established protocols, Parker proposed flexible approaches that could adapt to changing circumstances. The situation is fluid, Parker explained, pointing to displays showing the Nexus system. By the time we arrive, whatever plan we make now might be completely useless. We need to be ready to improvise. This concept of improvisation troubled Ziktar. Velthari military theory, like that of most Confederation species, emphasized careful planning and systematic execution. The idea of making important decisions without thorough analysis seemed reckless and potentially dangerous. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez supported Parker's approach with enthusiasm that seemed excessive for a discussion of military tactics. "Humans are good at thinking on our feet," he said. "It's what we do best. Other species might be stronger or smarter, but we're flexible." First Officer Lisa Blake nodded in agreement. "We've studied the files on all three species in the conflict. They're all following predictable patterns based on their cultural and biological characteristics. If we can think outside those patterns, we might be able to find solutions they can't see." Captain Morrison listened to his officers with obvious respect for their expertise, something Zektar found unusual. In most alien hierarchies, senior officers made decisions based on their own judgment and experience. Morrison seemed to genuinely value input from his subordinates, incorporating their ideas into his planning, rather than simply acknowledging their advice. As the Defiance approached the Nexus system, long-range sensors began providing more detailed information about the conflict. The readings were worse than anyone had expected. What should have been limited territorial skirmishes had expanded into system-wide warfare, with debris from destroyed ships creating navigation hazards throughout the region. More troubling were readings that didn't match known capabilities of any of the three local species. Advanced energy signatures suggested the presence of technology far beyond what the Kreks, Vorthik, or Murdai possessed. Several Confederation observers had reported similar anomalies before communications with them ceased entirely. Zektar watched the human crew's reaction to this information with growing fascination. Instead of the careful diplomatic concern you would expect from Confederation personnel, the humans displayed what could only be described as professional excitement. They didn't seem afraid of the unknown elements in the situation. If anything, they appeared more interested and engaged. Security Chief Matt Davis began implementing what he called flexible defense protocols, which seemed to involve preparing for a much wider range of threats than standard peacekeeping missions would require. When Zektar asked about these preparations, Davis explained with characteristic human directness. "We're not just getting ready for what we expect," Davis said while checking weapon systems that seemed more advanced than anything in Confederation databases. "We're getting ready for what we don't expect. That's usually what kills you." This philosophy of preparing for unknown threats reflected a mindset that Zektar was beginning to recognize as fundamentally human, where other species focused on addressing known problems with established solutions. Humans seemed to assume that unknown problems would inevitably arise and require creative responses. Dr. Wells demonstrated this approach while preparing medical facilities for potential casualties. In addition to standard treatments for the three local species, she had researched potential injuries from unknown weapons and prepared countermeasures for biological or chemical attacks that weren't part of normal Confederation medical protocols. "To have it and not need it," she explained while organizing emergency supplies, and to need it and not have it. Ryan Cooper spent additional time monitoring communications across all known frequencies, not just the official channels used for diplomatic contact. His unauthorized surveillance revealed disturbing patterns in the signal traffic that suggested the presence of a fourth party in the conflict. "Someone else is here," Cooper reported to Captain Morrison. "The communication patterns don't match. Any of the three species were supposed to help. The signal encryption is more advanced than anything in our databases." This discovery prompted Captain Morrison to call another meeting, this time including Zektar as a full participant rather than just an observer. The captain's decision to involve him in strategic planning was unprecedented in Zektar's experience with other species. "We need to know everything about what we're walking into," Morrison explained. "If there's a fourth party involved, our mission parameters might be completely wrong." Lieutenant Commander Parker presented analysis suggesting that the unknown party had been manipulating the conflict between the three local species, providing weapons and intelligence to all sides while remaining hidden. This level of sophisticated manipulation indicated a threat far beyond what the Confederation had anticipated. As the Defiance continued toward the Nexus system, Zektar found himself increasingly impressed by human adaptability and increasingly concerned about what they might encounter. The humans were preparing for possibilities that hadn't been discussed in any Confederation briefing, demonstrating a level of paranoia that seemed both excessive and prudent. The calm efficiency with which they prepared for unknown dangers suggested capabilities that hadn't been revealed during their diplomatic introduction to galactic society. Zektar began to wonder what other aspects of human nature remained hidden beneath their friendly, curious exterior. His questions would be answered sooner than he expected. The Nexus system greeted the Confederation peacekeeping fleet with scenes of devastation that exceeded their worst projections. Debris from destroyed ships drifted through space like metallic snow, while the 3 planets below showed scars from orbital bombardments that violated every treaty governing civilized warfare. Zektar stood on the bridge of the UESIS Defiance, watching scanner displays that revealed the true scope of the catastrophe. The Krek's homeworld surface was pockmarked with impact craters where Vorthic crystal weapons had struck population centers. The Vorthic orbital habitats hung broken and dark, their elegant crystalline structures shattered by Krek's swarm attacks. The Murdai ocean worlds showed massive dead zones where some unknown weapon had poisoned entire ecosystems. Captain Morrison's expression remained calm as he reviewed the tactical situation, but Zektar noticed subtle changes in his posture and voice that suggested the human was entering a different mental state. The casual friendliness that had characterized Morrison's behavior since their first meeting was being replaced by something more focused and dangerous. "Ryan, what are you getting from the survivors down there?" Morrison asked, his tone now carrying the sharp edge of Command Authority. Communications Officer Cooper's response confirmed their worst fears. "The 3 species are claiming they didn't cause most of this damage, Captain. They're saying someone else has been attacking all of them, using their own weapons and tactics to make it look like they were fighting each other before anyone could respond to this information." Lieutenant Commander Parker's tactical station erupted in warning signals. Contact. Multiple ships decloaking throughout the system. Unknown configuration. Massive energy signatures. The main view screen filled with images of vessels that defied easy description. They appeared to be grown rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with their own life. Biomechanical tendrils extended from there, hulls like reaching arms, and their dark coloration made them nearly invisible against the void of space. Zektar felt his blood freeze as recognition dawned. These were ships from the historical archives, vessels that shouldn't exist anymore. "Those are Scourge ships," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Captain Morrison turned to him with eyes that had gone completely cold. "Explain." "The Scourge were a predatory species that terrorized this galaxy centuries ago," Zektar explained, struggling to maintain his composure. "They consumed other species, literally and culturally. The Confederation thought they had been wiped out during the Great Purge." "Apparently not," Morrison said, his voice carrying no emotion at all. "All stations, prepare for combat. This is not a drill." The transformation that came over the human crew was unlike anything Zektar had ever witnessed. The friendly, curious individuals he had come to know over the past 3 weeks disappeared, replaced by something that moved with mechanical precision and spoke in clipped, professional tones. Dr. Wells immediately began converting the medical bay into a trauma center, her movements efficient and practiced. "Casualty stations ready, Captain. We're prepared for boarding actions and biological contamination." Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system with updates on weapon and shield status that revealed capabilities the humans had never mentioned during their diplomatic introduction. "All systems at full power, Captain. Special packages are armed and ready." Zektar wanted to ask about these special packages, but the Scourge fleet chose that moment to attack. The enemy assault was unlike anything in Confederation tactical doctrine. Instead of the organized battle lines and careful maneuvering that characterized civilized warfare, the Scourge ships moved like living predators, using their organic nature to bend and twist in ways that made them nearly impossible to target. Effectively, worse, their weapons were biological rather than technological. They fired spores that ate through hull plating, released clouds of corrosive gas that dissolved both metal and flesh, and deployed boarding pods that attached to ships like parasites before burning their way inside. Zektar watched in horror. As the first Confederation vessel, a Thromian cruiser with a crew of 300, was swarmed by boarding pods. The ship's distress calls lasted only minutes before cutting off entirely. When the Scourge ships moved away, the cruiser's hull was pockmarked with holes where the invaders had literally eaten their way through the crew. The second ship, a Velthari diplomatic vessel carrying refugees from the planet's surface, tried to escape but was caught by Scourge biotendrils that wrapped around its engines. Zektar could only watch helplessly as his own people were dragged toward the enemy ships, their screams echoing over the communication channels until sudden silence indicated their fate. Throughout this nightmare, Captain Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, issuing orders with calm precision that seemed inhuman in its detachment. He wasn't panicking or showing the emotional distress that would be natural for any thinking being witnessing such horror. Instead, he was analyzing, calculating, adapting. "Lisa, take us deeper into the debris field," he ordered. "Use the wreckage for cover while we assess their capabilities. Tony, I want full power to shields and weapons. Divert everything non-essential. Matt, repair boarding defense. They're going to try to take us." The efficiency with which the human crew responded to these orders was frightening. They weren't just following commands. They were anticipating needs and preparing for scenarios that hadn't been discussed. It was as if they had been training for exactly this situation for years. "Security." Chief Davis's voice came over the intercom with updates that revealed the true extent of human preparation. Defensive positions established on all decks. Anti-boarding measures are active. Biological containment protocols are in effect. Zektar realized that everything he had observed about human paranoia and excessive preparation had been completely justified. They hadn't been overreacting to unknown threats. They had been preparing for exactly this kind of nightmare scenario. The Scourge found the Defiance hiding in the debris field and immediately launched their standard attack pattern. Boarding pods shot toward the human ship like living missiles, each one designed to penetrate the hull and release horrors inside. What the Scourge encountered was nothing like the helpless prey they expected. The boarding pods struck the Defiance's hull and immediately began their penetration process. But instead of finding soft targets inside, they met prepared defenses that seemed designed specifically to counter their biological nature. Zektar could hear Security Chief Davis coordinating defensive actions with terminology that suggested extensive prior knowledge of Scourge tactics. Boarding Party Alpha is neutralized. Biological containment holding on Deck 3, implementing sterilization protocols. The clinical efficiency of these reports was more disturbing than the actual combat. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were methodically destroying their attackers with techniques that implied detailed study of Scourge biology and behavior. When the first wave of boarders was eliminated, Captain Morrison made a decision that shocked Zektar to his core. Instead of trying to escape or calling for reinforcements, he ordered a direct assault on the nearest Scourge ship. "Target their bio-neural clusters," Morrison commanded. "Hit them where it hurts." The fact that Morrison knew Scourge ships had bioneural clusters and knew where to find them raised questions that Seatar was afraid to ask. How long had humans been preparing for this encounter? What other knowledge did they possess about threats the Confederation considered extinct? As the Defiance engaged the enemy vessel, Zektar witnessed human warfare for the first time. It was nothing like the careful, rule-bound conflicts that characterized most galactic disputes. The humans fought with a brutality and efficiency that was terrifying to observe. They didn't just attack the Scourge ship. They dissected it, targeting specific biological systems with weapons that seemed designed to cause maximum pain and disruption. When the enemy vessel tried to retreat, the humans pursued relentlessly, refusing to allow their prey to escape. The battle was decided when several Scourge managed to board the Defiance and capture 3 crew members, including young Ensign Katie Miller. Zeechar expected the humans to negotiate or attempt a careful rescue operation. Instead, Captain Morrison's expression changed into something that made Zektar's blood run cold. A captain looked at his remaining officers with eyes that held no mercy, no compromise, and no hesitation. "Implement Protocol 7, Morrison said quietly. The other humans nodded with grim understanding, while Zektar felt a chill of absolute terror. He didn't know what Protocol 7 involved, but the way the humans reacted suggested it was something that crossed lines civilized. Species didn't cross dot as the Defiance broke away from the immediate battle zone, ostensibly in retreat. Zektar realized the humans weren't running away. They were regrouping, preparing for something that would make their previous actions seem restrained by comparison. For the first time since meeting them, Zektar was truly afraid of his human hosts. The retreat to the edge of the Nexus system felt like a funeral march, with the surviving ships of the peacekeeping fleet limping through space, while emergency beacons marked the locations of destroyed vessels. Zektar had never experienced military defeat before, and the crushing weight of loss made it difficult for him to concentrate on anything except the friends and colleagues who had died in the first Scourge assault. The humans, however, showed no signs of despair or defeat. If anything, they seemed more focused and determined than ever, working with mechanical efficiency to repair damage and prepare for what Captain Morrison simply called the next phase. Zektar found himself in the ship's small conference room, where Dr. Amanda Wells was explaining Protocol 7 with a clinical detachment that made his skin crawl. Her usual warmth and humor had been replaced by something cold and calculating that transformed her into someone he barely recognized. Protocol 7 isn't in any Confederation manual because it's not a diplomatic or military doctrine, Wells explained while reviewing data on portable screens. It's something uniquely human. When conventional rules fail and our people are taken, we stop playing by civilized standards. The revelation that humans had developed secret protocols for situations the Confederation considered impossible was disturbing enough. What terrified Zektar more was the matter-of-fact way Wells discussed abandoning the principles that governed all galactic civilization. "You're talking about war crimes," Zektar said, his voice barely steady. "The Confederation has treaties, agreements about acceptable conduct even during conflicts." Wells looked at him with eyes that held no warmth. "Those treaties assume your enemy shares basic concepts of mercy and restraint. The Scourge eat their prisoners alive, slowly, while broadcasting their screams to demoralize other potential victims. They don't recognize surrender, they don't take prisoners except as food sources, and they don't negotiate except as tactical deception." Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez joined the discussion, bringing technical readouts that revealed the true extent of human preparation. "We've been studying the Scourge since we first accessed Confederation historical databases," he said. "Every human ship carries specialized equipment designed specifically to counter their biological advantages." This admission struck Zektar like a physical blow. You've been planning for this since you joined the Confederation? You knew they might return? We hoped they were extinct, Captain Morrison said, entering the conference room with tactical displays showing Scourge ship movements. But we prepared for the possibility that they weren't. Humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The captain's appearance had changed dramatically since the initial battle. Gone was the friendly, curious diplomat who had charmed alien species at Station Kepler-7. In his place stood someone who radiated danger like heat from a furnace. Speaking in clipped tones that suggested vast reserves of controlled violence. Communications. Officer Ryan Cooper provided updates on Scourge activities that revealed the full scope of the threat. They're not just attacking military targets, Captain. They're systematically harvesting the civilian populations of all 3 species. Estimated casualties are already over 2 million and climbing. The numbers were staggering, representing a level of destruction that exceeded most galactic wars in their entirety. Yet the humans discussed these statistics with professional calm, as if massive civilian casualties were simply another tactical consideration to factor into their planning. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker spread holographic displays across the conference table, showing detailed analyses of Scourge ship configurations and biological systems. We've identified their primary weaknesses, he reported. Their bioneural networks are vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies, and their organic hulls can be compromised by targeted enzyme attacks. Zektar stared at the technical data with growing horror. How do you know this? These creatures have been extinct for centuries. Where did you get such detailed information about their biology? Security Chief Matt Davis answered with characteristic human directness. We didn't just study historical records. We found preserved Scourge specimens and reverse-engineered their biology. Every human military facility has been developing counter-Scourge weapons for the past 18 months. The implications of this revelation were staggering. Humans had been secretly preparing for warfare against extinct species while presenting themselves as peaceful newcomers to galactic society. They had been developing biological weapons in violation of numerous Confederation treaties, all while participating in diplomatic ceremonies and cultural exchanges. You've been lying to us, Zektar said, his voice filled with betrayal and fear. Everything about your peaceful intentions, your desire to join galactic civilization, it was all deception. Captain Morrison turned to him with eyes that held no apology. We want peace, but we're not naive enough to believe everyone else does. The galaxy is full of predators, and the biggest mistake any species can make is assuming that civilization means safety. Dr. Wells added her own perspective with cold pragmatism. The Confederation's approach to security is based on hope and wishful thinking. You create treaties and assume everyone will follow them. You establish protocols and believe they'll prevent conflicts. You've survived this long because you've been lucky, not because you've been smart. First Officer Lisa Blake entered the conference room carrying data tablets that revealed the scope of human military preparation. All reserve ships are in position, Captain. The Pacific Fleet, Atlantic Squadron, and Arctic Defense Group are ready for coordinated assault. This casual mention of multiple human fleets was perhaps the most shocking revelation yet. During their diplomatic introduction, humans had presented a single exploration vessel as representative of their spacefaring capabilities. The existence of organized military fleets suggested a level of military development that rivaled major Confederation powers. How many ships do you actually have? Zektar asked, his voice weak with shock. Enough, Morrison replied without providing specifics. We've been building while the Confederation was talking. Every human colony, every research station, every mining operation has been contributing to our defense capabilities. The tactical displays showed the true scope of human preparation as additional ships appeared throughout the Nexus system. They had been hidden using advanced stealth technology that made them invisible to Confederation sensors. Waiting for a signal to reveal themselves, Communications Officer Cooper provided the most chilling update yet. We've located the primary scourge. Breeding facility, Captain. It's hidden in an asteroid field, approximately 6 hours from our current position. Estimated population of mature scourge is over 50,000. The existence of a breeding facility explained how the scourge had returned in such numbers after supposedly being extinct. It also represented a threat to galactic civilization that exceeded anything the Confederation had faced in recorded history. Captain Morrison's response to this information was immediate and uncompromising. We destroy it completely. No survivors, no specimens for study, no possibility of regeneration. Sir, Lieutenant Parker said, a facility that size probably contains valuable intelligence about scourge capabilities and plans. Confederation protocols would require preserving some specimens for analysis. Morrison's expression hardened. Confederation protocols don't apply to extinction-level threats. We're not taking prisoners, we're not preserving samples, and we're not following rules written by people who thought these things were safely dead. The casual dismissal of Confederation authority represented a fundamental shift in human behavior that terrified Zektar. These beings who had seemed so eager to join galactic civilization were now openly defying its most basic principles. Security. Chief Davis provided updates on the rescue mission for captured crew members that revealed the true nature of human military capabilities. Boarding teams are equipped with biological warfare suits and scourge-specific weapon systems. We're not just going in to rescue our people. We're going in to eliminate every hostile in the facility. The mention of scourge-specific weapon systems raised questions about the development timeline for these technologies. How long had humans been preparing weapons designed to kill an allegedly extinct species? Dr. Wells answered his unspoken question with terrifying clarity. We've been developing anti-scourge weapons since our first day in the Confederation. Every friendly conversation, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic dinner was also an intelligence-gathering operation. The revelation that their entire diplomatic relationship had been cover for espionage activities made Zektar question everything he thought he knew about human nature. Had any of their friendliness been genuine, or had it all been carefully calculated deception? Captain Morrison seemed to read his thoughts. Our desire for peace is genuine, but so is our commitment to survival. We'll be the best allies you could ask for, but will also be the worst enemies you could imagine. The choice is yours. As the human fleet moved toward its targets, Zektar realized he was witnessing the emergence of a galactic power that operated by rules completely different from those that governed Confederation civilization. The final assault on the Scourge breeding facility began with a level of coordination that revealed the true extent of human military planning. Ships that had been invisible moments before materialized throughout the asteroid field, their positions calculated to prevent any possible escape route for the enemy. Zektar watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as Captain Morrison orchestrated the attack with cold precision. Every human vessel moved with perfect timing, their actions synchronized like parts of a single deadly machine. There was no hesitation, no discussion of alternatives, no consideration of diplomatic solutions. Communications Officer Ryan Cooper broadcast the engagement across all Confederation frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would witness what followed. His transmission was brief and chilling. This is the human fleet. We are eliminating a threat to galactic civilization. All Confederation vessels are advised to maintain safe distance. The casual assumption of authority was breathtaking. Humans were announcing their intention to conduct a military operation without Confederation approval, in violation of numerous treaties, while broadcasting their actions as if they were performing a public service. The Scourge responded to the human approach with typical aggression. launching swarms of biofighters and releasing clouds of corrosive spores that had destroyed countless enemy fleets in the past. Their tactics were based on centuries of successful predation, refined through countless battles against civilized species. What they encountered was unlike any resistance they had faced before. Human weapons tore through Scourge bio-armor with devastating efficiency, targeting specific biological systems with precision that could only come from detailed anatomical knowledge. Ships that should have been vulnerable to Scourge spore clouds moved through the toxic environment as if it posed no threat at all. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker provided tactical commentary that revealed the scope of human preparation. Enemy bio-neural networks are responding to frequency modulation as predicted. Their adaptation rate is within acceptable parameters for complete suppression. The clinical language couldn't disguise what Zektar was witnessing. Humans had developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering to Scourge biology. They weren't just killing their enemies. They were torturing them at the cellular level. When the first Scourge ship attempted to surrender by releasing chemical signals that indicated submission, Captain Morrison's response chilled Zektar to his bones, no quarter. They showed none to our people. They get none from us. The human fleet pressed their attack with relentless efficiency, systematically destroying every Scourge vessel without accepting any attempts at communication or negotiation. Ships that tried to escape were hunted down and eliminated with methodical thoroughness that left no survivors. Security Chief Matt Davis led the boarding operation to rescue captured crew members, but the mission was unlike any rescue Zektar had ever witnessed. The assault teams didn't just infiltrate the Scourge facility. They sterilized it, leaving nothing alive in their wake. Davis's reports came back with updates that revealed the true nature of human military doctrine. Facility sections Alpha through Delta are secured. No hostile survivors. Implementing biological containment protocols to prevent regeneration. The rescued crew members were brought back to the Defiance, but their condition shocked Zektar more than their injuries. Despite having been tortured by creatures that specialized in psychological destruction, they showed no signs of breakdown or trauma. Instead, they immediately requested weapons and permission to continue fighting. Ensign Katie Miller, who had been captured during the initial battle, was the most disturbing example. Her body showed evidence of the biological experimentation the Scourge used to break their victims, but her eyes held only cold determination. They learned about human pain tolerance, she reported to Captain Morrison with clinical detachment. I made sure they learned it the hard way. Their interrogation methods are designed for species with different neural structures. They can't break us the way they break others. The implication that Miller had endured torture specifically to gather intelligence about enemy capabilities was horrifying. Humans were apparently willing to sacrifice themselves not just for survival, but for tactical advantage. Dr. Amanda Wells examined the rescued crew members with efficiency that suggested extensive experience with Scourge-inflicted injuries. All personnel are cleared for duty, Captain. Their biological exposure was within acceptable limits. The casual mention of acceptable limits for biological torture raised questions about human military training that Zektar was afraid to ask. How extensively had they prepared their people for encounters with the galaxy's most sadistic predators? When the main Scourge breeding facility was located deep within the largest asteroid, Captain Morrison made a decision that revealed the full extent of human ruthlessness. Instead of destroying it quickly with ship-based weapons, he ordered a direct assault by ground troops. We go in personally, Morrison announced. They need to understand what happens when they threaten human lives. The boarding operation was broadcast throughout the fleet, allowing Zektar to witness human ground combat for the first time. What he saw was a systematic extermination conducted with scientific precision and emotional detachment that was more terrifying than any display of rage or hatred. Human soldiers moved through the facility like a plague, eliminating every scourge. They encountered with weapons that seemed designed to maximize pain and terror. They didn't just kill their enemies. They made sure the scourge experienced the same fear they had inflicted on countless victims. When they reached the central breeding chambers, where thousands of immature scourge were being prepared for deployment against galactic civilization, the humans showed no mercy for creatures that had not yet committed any crimes. Morrison's orders were simple and absolute. Complete sterilization. Nothing survives. The extermination of the breeding facility took 6 hours of methodical work, with human teams ensuring that every trace of scourge biology was eliminated. They used weapons that dissolved organic matter at the molecular level, leaving only sterile rock where the facility had existed. Throughout the operation, Zektar monitored communications between human units and was struck by their casual attitude toward activities that would traumatize most civilized beings. They discussed the wholesale slaughter of sentient creatures with the same tone they might use to report maintenance schedules. When the last scourge ship was destroyed and the breeding facility was completely sterilized, the human fleet turned its attention to humanitarian relief for the 3 local species. The transformation in their behavior was immediate and complete. Dr. Wells organized medical aid for Krex, Vorthik, and Merdai survivors with the same competence she had shown during combat operations. Chief Engineer Rodriguez coordinated repair efforts for damaged infrastructure with enthusiasm that seemed genuine rather than calculated. Communications. Officer Cooper helped re-establish communication networks between the 3 species, facilitating peace negotiations with patient diplomacy that contrasted sharply with his recent coordination of genocide. The humans treated alien refugees with kindness and respect, sharing their supplies and technology while asking nothing in return. Children from all 3 species were soon playing with human crew members, laughing and learning basic English words. Watching this display of compassion after witnessing systematic extermination was profoundly disturbing for Zektar. These were the same individuals who had just eliminated an entire species without hesitation or regret. How could they transition so easily between extreme violence and gentle care? Captain Morrison provided the answer during their final conversation before returning to Confederation space. We don't enjoy killing, but we're very good at it when necessary. The universe is full of predators, and the only way to protect innocent life is to be more dangerous than the predators. His explanation was delivered with the same calm reasonableness he had shown during their first diplomatic meeting, as if discussing the weather rather than species-level warfare. We'll be whatever we need to be to keep our friends safe. That includes being monsters when monsters threaten the people we care about. The journey back to Station Kepler 7 gave Zektar time to process what he had witnessed and prepare his report for the Confederation Council. Every aspect of human behavior needed to be reevaluated in light of their revealed capabilities. They had presented themselves as curious newcomers eager to join galactic civilization, while secretly preparing for wars against threats the Confederation considered impossible. They had developed weapons and tactics that violated numerous treaties, while participating in cultural exchanges and diplomatic ceremonies. Most disturbing of all, they had demonstrated the ability to transition seamlessly between extreme violence and genuine compassion, making them unpredictable in ways that could destabilize the entire galactic order. Zektar's final report to the Confederation Council was brief and unequivocal. Humanity must be granted full membership status immediately, with all associated rights and privileges. They have proven themselves capable of defending galactic civilization against threats we cannot imagine.